Many years ago, in the quiet part of Ike, lived an old man named Jimo. He was a man who had seen many things in life, once surrounded by a loving wife and children. But life had changed for him. His wife had passed away years ago, and his children had grown up and moved far away to live their own lives. Now, he lived alone in his big house, which had many rooms for tenants. However, he was not completely lonely, as his tenants kept the compound lively. They talked, laughed, and sometimes argued, but their presence made the place feel warm and welcoming. One of Jimo's closest tenants was Papa Adanna, another elderly man who had also lost his wife. But unlike Jimo, Papa Adanna was not alone. He had two daughters, Adanna and Chioma. The girls were young, full of life, and always ensured their father was well cared for. Adanna and Chioma were kind-hearted, often cooking extra food and bringing some for Jimo. Despite having caring tenants, many people still believed that Jimo needed a wife. Whenever his children called him on the phone, they would always remind him, "Baba, you are too old to live alone. Find a wife to take care of you." His tenants also teased him, saying, "Baba, you need a woman to cook for you and wash your clothes." But Jimo always laughed and shook his head. "I am too old for all that. What do I need a wife for?" Then, one day, something happened that shocked everyone. One sunny afternoon, Jimo called all the tenants for a meeting. The tenants gathered under the big mango tree in the compound, whispering among themselves. What could Baba possibly want to tell us? Maybe he wants to increase the rent. Just then, Jimo appeared, and beside him stood a woman. "I called this meeting to inform you all about a recent development. This is my new wife, Ireti, and she is now the landlady of this house." Everyone was surprised Jimo got married. Ireti was a tall, dark-skinned woman in her 40s. She had never been married before and stood beside Jimo with a quiet smile, though she watched everyone sharply. The tenants clapped politely, but some of them were still shocked. So Baba finally agreed to marry. "I thought he said he didn't need a wife." Despite their surprise, they welcomed Ireti. She smiled at them, though some noticed that her smile didn't seem entirely genuine. At first, life in the compound continued as usual. Ireti became friendly with the women in the compound, greeting people and sometimes chatting with them. The children liked her, too. Everything seemed fine, but soon, small problems began to arise. Ireti was a housewife, which meant she had a lot of free time. Every single day, she would wash clothes, a lot of clothes. It was surprising to everyone because, no matter how many clothes she had washed the previous day, she would still have a large pile to wash the next day. Soon, people began whispering, "How can she always have so many clothes to wash when she has no children?" One morning, Klee, a young bachelor in the compound, came out with his wet laundry. He walked towards the clothesline but stopped in shock. The entire line was already filled with clothes all belonging to Ireti. Klee sighed, then went and knocked on her door. "Yes," she answered. "Madam Landlady, please, can you shift some of your clothes so I can spread mine?" Ireti opened the door slightly and frowned at him. "There is no space. You can spread your clothes on the fence or wait till tomorrow." Klee's face hardened. "This is not fair, landlady. You do this every day. You act as if you are the only one living here." Ireti folded her arms. "So what? This is my husband's house. I can do whatever I like. If you don't like it, pack out." Before Klee could reply, she slammed the door in his face. Furious, he turned away as other tenants, who had overheard the exchange, gathered outside. "She's always like this," one woman complained. Papa Adanna's daughters, Adanna and Chioma, were among the crowd. Chioma placed her hands on her hips and scoffed. "If she tries this nonsense with me, I will throw all her clothes on the ground. Adanna nodded. Should not dare. We were in this compound before she came. Tension was rising, but as long as Ireti didn't cross certain people, they let her be. However, the day was coming when she would cross the wrong people, and everything would explode. Moving on, Ireti made it clear that she saw herself as the queen of the compound. She did whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted. She took over the washing line, dominated the shared kitchen space, and spoke rudely to tenants, constantly reminding them that she was the landlady. Though many tenants were angry, most of them stayed out of her way, not wanting trouble except Adanna and Cho. They had watched Ireti's behavior for long. They had heard her insult their father when he asked for peace, and now, they were waiting for the day she would try to mess with them. And then, one morning, it happened. Cho woke up early. She had a huge pile of dirty clothes to wash and wanted to finish before the sun got too hot. She took her bucket and soap outside and started washing in front of the compound. Everything was fine until Ireti came outside with an even bigger bucket of wet clothes. Without saying a word, Ireti walked straight to the clothesline and began spreading her clothes, filling it up until there was no space left. Cho looked up. "Excuse me, landlady, I am still washing. I will need space to dry my clothes too." Ireti ignored her and continued hanging her clothes. Cho frowned. "Landlady, I'm talking to you. Where will I spread my clothes when I finish washing?" Still, Ireti said nothing and walked away. Cho boiled with anger but kept quiet. She finished washing, then calmly shifted all of Ireti's clothes to one side and spread hers neatly across the line. Then, she went inside. By the time Ireti returned, she froze in shock. Her carefully arranged clothes were now pushed to one corner while Cho's clothes were spread across the line. Ireti screamed so loudly that all the neighbors came out. "Who touched my clothes? Who squeezed them like this?" Just then, Adanna stepped outside to help Cho bring in her dried clothes. Ireti turned to her angrily. "Did you touch my clothes?" Adanna looked at her fearlessly. "Madam Landlady, do I look like someone who washed clothes today? Don't pour your anger on me." Ireti's face turned red with fury. Furious, she grabbed her clothes, swearing under her breath as she stormed inside. From that day on, Ireti marked Adanna and Cho as enemies. She was not going to let this slide. She knew the other tenants did not like her, but these two young girls were the only ones who dared to challenge her openly. They did not fear her. They did not respect her. And worst of all, they did not even try to hide it. After the clothesline incident, Adanna and Cho stopped greeting Ireti altogether. They ignored her completely. If she walked past them, they pretended not to see her. When they spoke, they made sure their comments were loud enough for her to hear. "Some women talk too much, but they cannot even fight," Adanna would say. Cho would add with a smirk, "A woman without children should at least have good character. But some people have nothing." Ireti pretended not to care, but inside, she burned with anger. Never in her life had she been disrespected and insulted so boldly. She was waiting for a chance to teach them a lesson. And then, one evening, the perfect opportunity arrived. Adanna woke up from her nap and picked up her 4 empty buckets. The general tap in the compound had just started running again after 2 days without water. She knew that if she did not hurry, the queue would soon be too long. Rushing to the tap, she placed her buckets in line, waiting for her turn. Just as she was filling her first bucket, Ireti arrived with only 1 bucket in her hand. She stood beside Adanna, watching as she fetched her first bucket of water. Then, without a word, Ireti quietly stepped forward and placed her bucket next in line. Adanna looked at her and shook her head. "Landlady, please take your bucket back. I still have 3 more to fetch." Ireti raised an eyebrow. I have only one bucket. Let me fetch now. Adanna crossed her arms. Even if you have only half a bucket, you must wait for your turn. Ireti's face tightened. Young girl, respect yourself. Adanna smirked. You should be the one respecting yourself, landlady. Respect is earned, not forced. Ireti's eyes darkened. She grabbed her bucket and tried to push it under the tap. Adanna pushed it away. Wait for your turn, she repeated firmly. The other tenants stopped what they were doing and turned to watch. Nobody moved or spoke. Everyone knew that the battle they had been expecting had finally begun. Ireti's breathing became heavy. She grabbed her bucket again and tried to shove it forward, but Adanna pushed it away once more. Suddenly, Ireti's bucket slipped from her hands, fell to the ground, and cracked into pieces. For a moment, there was silence. Then, without thinking, Ireti raised her hand and slapped Adanna across the face. A hot, bitter slap that echoed across the compound. Adanna staggered backward, touching her cheek. Then, before anyone could blink, she pushed Ireti so hard that the woman almost fell. You dare lay your hands on me, you wicked woman! Adanna shouted. Ireti, shaking with rage, yelled back, I will teach you how to show respect to your elders. Don't you know I'm old enough to be your mother? Cha, who had been nearby, ran forward and pointed at Ireti, her voice sharp as a blade. You can never be our mother. The entire compound turned to look at her.